Brown v. Board of Education was decided unanimously. But was it right? In 1987, President Ronald Reagan nominated Robert Bork to be a justice on the United States Supreme Court. His nomination failed on a vote of 58 against to 42 in favor, making him the most recent nominee to be rejected by the Senate. Bork was rejected because he was an extreme conservative who took several positions that were shocking to a large segment of the American public. Liberal interest groups ran several advertisements against his nomination, swaying the tide of public opinion. One of Bork's most controversial positions was that Brown v. Board of Education was wrongly decided. Although he stressed that he would not vote to overturn it if he were confirmed, he argued that the Equal Protection Clause does not prohibit segregated schools. Did the Supreme Court get it wrong? What might a dissenting opinion in Brown v. Board of Education look like? Let's take a look at Bork's argument. Liberals and conservatives tend to have fundamentally different ideas about how to interpret the U.S. Constitution. Bork and many other conservatives believe that the Constitution should be interpreted according to the doctrine of original intent. The doctrine of original intent views the Constitution as a contract. When the Constitution and its amendments were written and ratified, they had a specific meaning. That meaning should not be changed by judges, who are not elected and sit for life. The framers provided a method for amending the Constitution, and if the people want to amend it, they may do so. But according to conservatives, the job of a judge is to figure out what the people who wrote the Constitution would have thought. So now let's apply the doctrine of original intent to the issue of segregated schools. The 14th Amendment was proposed in 1866. To determine whether the Equal Protection Clause prohibits segregated schools, Bork would want to know what the members of Congress back in 1866 would have thought about the issue. And there is clear evidence that the members of Congress who wrote and passed the Equal Protection Clause didn't have any problem with segregated schools. We know this from a couple of different things. First, several members of Congress gave speeches on the floor of the House and Senate, and they specifically said that the amendment did not require integrated schools. Perhaps more significantly, the very same session of Congress that proposed the 14th Amendment also passed a law requiring racial segregation in public schools in Washington, D.C. In other words, the very same people who passed the Equal Protection Clause also voted in favor of segregated schools. If you believe that the Constitution should be interpreted according to the original intent of the framers, then Bork was almost certainly correct. But many people argue that the Constitution should be updated to reflect the current times. Robert Bork had an answer for that. He agreed that sometimes the Constitution needs to be changed, but that judges shouldn't be the ones to change it. He said that if the people wanted to change the meaning of the Equal Protection Clause to ban segregated schools, they should pass a new constitutional amendment to do so. This argument sounds quite reasonable, but there are a number of problems with it. One question is how to determine the intent of the framers. Judges are not historians, and different framers may have had different motivations. Many times, judges disagree among themselves about what the intent of the framers is. Another criticism is the fact that the Constitution and virtually all of its amendments were originally written and ratified exclusively by white men. There were no minorities or women at the Constitutional Convention, or in Congress for decades afterward. But perhaps the most damning criticism of the doctrine of original intent is that it dramatically underestimates how difficult it is to amend the Constitution. Amendments normally require a 2/3 majority vote in both houses of Congress, and ratification from 38 out of the 50 states. Only 17 amendments have been ratified since the original Bill of Rights. If America had to wait for a constitutional amendment to achieve desegregation, we would still be waiting. In an interesting postscript, Bork's argument that Brown v. Board was wrong was considered so extreme back in 1987 that he was rejected by the Senate. But several of Donald Trump's nominees to the lower federal courts refused to say whether they thought Brown was correctly decided, and they were confirmed nevertheless.